Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Asmogan, and I welcome you here. Let's talk about the Imperial Fists. Now, in this kind of off-the-cuff video series, it's just kind of going to be a series of videos where I just riff, on certain chapters. Not just like riff on them, not just roast them, but also say what I love about them. It's more or less just an off-the-cuff review of sorts of the individual chapters of Astartes. We might also get into regiments of the Asher Militarum. We might also get into, I don't know, clans of the orcs, that shit. We'll basically the sub-factions within factions. We're going to be looking at those, going to be having a load of fun with that, and just fucking having a fucking blast, man. Don't anyone get on my ass for accents. I'm not good at them, but they're fun to do anyway. Alright, so the Imperial Fists is today's. Why not the Ultra Smurfs? Well, it'd be a short video if I was being reasonable, and a rant if I was being unreasonable. So, we might save them for another time where I could properly script that one. But anyway, the Imperial Fists. The Imperial Fists, very interesting chapter, Masters of the Siege. And though many of you who have been long followers of the channel know that I'm a deep lover of the Black Templars, I do enjoy the Imperial Fists quite a bit. Their progenitor chapter, the progenitor legion of the Imperial Fists, who birthed the Black Templars, the Crimson Fists. You gotta get a kick out of them. You gotta love the Imperial Fists. Masters of the Siege, like I said. They are also stubborn as fuck. They don't want to move from their entrenched positions, and if they're not making a step forward, they ain't making a step.
Iron Warriors, calling all Iron Warriors, calling all Iron Warriors. Your Primarch's a bitch.
I don't know, the dichotomy between the Iron Warriors and the Imperial Fists with their whole, competing Masters of Siege, Siegecraft, has always been an interesting, like I said, dichotomy between the two chapters. But the personality difference between their Primarchs is also so significant. Perturabo with this huge, internal issue thing, with oh, I'm not good enough, I'm going to kill my own sons because I can't handle it. I criticize myself to no end, everyone hates me. That's Perturabo in a nutshell. But with Rogel Dorn, he's like the exact opposite. It's kind of beautiful. Because he was stalwart, wasn't outwardly emotional, he was confident most of the time, and again, he was what you would picture a master of siegecraft to be. He himself was almost like a anthropomorphic embodiment of a stone hard wall. Perturabo was kind of like, those flakes of grass in the wind. Just a stiff breeze would be down for the count. Now, I'm not going to be that guy who's going to say that Perturabo was incapable of manifesting strong siege embodiments. After all, the Iron Cage comes to mind, and that fucking crippled the Imperial Fists. But come on, man! Again, I can't... If there's definitely one chapter over the other that I picture more for the siege, more for those defensive emplacements and holding their ground, despite all odds, it's the Imperial Fist, and their Primarch is definitely the one that comes to mind no matter what. Never really the Iron Warriors. Never do I think, oh yes, Masters of Siegecraft. I think more like they're the second fiddle, like the backup of Siegecraft. And by God, their fucking Primarch's a bitch. Another thing I love about the Imperial Fists is definitely their aesthetic. I know there's a lot of people who aren't a fan of that emboldened yellow, but for me, I really do like it. It's very different from a lot of the other chapters. Again, they stand out quite a bit, but I almost look at that as a boldness. They're confident. They're so confident in their entrenched positions. They're like, yeah, I'm gonna paint myself this giant glowing color that you can target from a fucking mile away easily, with no special abilities or tech. Yeah, I'm gonna do it because you ain't gonna hit me. I'm gonna create defenses that you can barely see half of my ass crack through. Good luck with that, motherfucker. I don't know. I kind of like to think that that's the reasoning, but I think the real reasoning, I think it's just the color they ended up with. How did the Salamanders become green? How did the Ultra Marines become blue? I think someone just rolled the dice and said, okay, so we're gonna put a color on each of these die. We're gonna see which of us gets primary colors, right? Yellow. I don't know off the top of my head if there is lore about like why certain chapters chose certain colors. There probably is. There's lore on pretty much everything in 40k. It's just, again, since it's off the cuff, I'm not... It's not like I have a script. Oh, yes, that's why. It was because someone with the name Yellow died in an honorable battle. So, Yellow. I don't know. I don't know, but it's funny to think that that's the case, isn't it? I don't know. Is that just me? It's probably just me. All in all, one thing I do want to bring up is, in all of these videos, though, is kind of like that whole Primaris inclusion that happened recently. I think the Imperial Fists are the other Legion other than the Ultramarines that I do see being more accepting of Primaris into their ranks from a lore perspective. They would still probably have a problem with it, I believe. I believe they would definitely see it as a inkling towards blasphemy towards the Emperor. I can't remember off the top of my head if the Imperial Fists in the 41st millennium think of the Emperor as a god. I'm pretty sure they don't. I'm pretty sure, like most chapters, they still remember how they feel about the Emperor and how that he's not really a religious god of any kind. He is their mighty Emperor who leads them into battle and leads them through the worst of the worst shit, and that he's the father of Dorne and therefore their father and that stuff. I don't think they think of him as a god. I can't remember if they do. I know the Black Templars do, and they're a successor chapter of them, so it's kind of weird that, that kind of play off. It's like, oh, we originate from the same point, we're in such different places. And one thing I definitely could say is the Black Templars they're not masters of siegecraft, that's for sure. But as for their Primaris inclusion, I don't think the Imperial Fists would be all that welcoming, but I believe because, again, of that Codex adherence that Dorne held them to, again with the protocol in place that if things were dire enough, throw the fucking Codex out the fucking window. But with that aside, I do think it's important to note that because of that adherence to the Codex, because that they follow it pretty much as closely as the Ultramarines, I think they would inevitably allow Primaris into their ranks. I think they'd have more of a problem with it than the Ultramarines, but I think they would inevitably yield to it. They'd be offended, they'd be pissed, they probably wouldn't be too happy about it. But yeah, I don't see them welcoming them. Now, obviously, if there's lore out there recently, like that GW's writing that the Imperial Fists or the Imperial Fists or other legions just accept the Primaris with no issues at all, I call bullshit. GW, if you guys are writing that, actually know your own lore. There's no way all of the other than the Ultra Smurfs, who I don't see being totally enthused about it, I don't see any other chapter just welcoming them in. First of all, they represent if they even put pen to paper that the Black Templars are like, yes, come on in, Primaris, welcome to our ranks. Sorry, I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening. Bullshit. If that's put on pen to paper, that is bullshit. I don't believe it for a second. You've written in your own lore how religiously zealoted the fucking Black Templars are. There's no way they're going to look at the Primaris, understand what created them. Oh, you thought you could do better than the Emperor. Oh, and you claim to have created a more genetically refined Astartes than the Emperor could. Heresy. I don't see that going over well. Do you? Like, if you do, good on you. I don't see that happening. But yeah, I'm not a fan of Primaris from a lore perspective whatsoever, if that wasn't a clue. So most of the time when I rattle off at the end of these kind of off-the-cuff chapter reviews of sorts, it'll mostly be negative. Other than with the Ultramarines, which I'll eventually do, it's just, again, I gotta figure out a way to talk about them in not the most negative way possible. But I do not see most chapters being like, yes, come on in, no problem. I don't see it. Maybe the Salamanders, because they're just dude bros. Well, they're not dude bros. They're like bros. They're like, come on in. Welcome. Would you like some water? We got some tea as well. We're really awesome. Don't mind the red eyes and the charcoal skin though. Like that's just a skin condition from my homeworld. But welcome to Shangri-La, man. I'm sorry. We'll get to the salamanders probably next time. Now I want to talk about them. Well, the last thing I'll probably end off on is, I kind of already hit on it earlier, but my views of the Primarch. Rogaldorn is probably my favorite Primarch, next to Sanguinius. I love Rogaldorn. He's stalwart, he's tough, and like I said before, he is like the anthropomorphic embodiment of a wall. He is stone cold, he is tough, and he is unbreakable. You will not smash against him and take him down even after 1,000 volleys. That is the Primarch of Rogaldorn. With that, he's kind of got to stick up his ass because of that. That's one thing I'll acknowledge, is Dorn is a bit of that guy. He's very like cold, not very outwardly emotional, so oftentimes he might come off as like pompous or overconfident or just a little unlikable because he's not very, he's not charismatic, but he's not really meant to be. That's one thing I've always wondered why people seem to have an issue with it. It's like, oh, Rogel is just got his stick up his ass. He's just a stubborn son of a bitch. It's like, well, yeah, but he was literally an emperor to his own empire for one, so you had to have that presence of control and confidence. You can't have your men looking at you and seeing you go,
oh, well, I wonder if we can do this.
No, you need to be confident. You need to bump up your chest. You need to say,
I got this, motherfucker.
You gotta have that. So Rogaldorn, I think that fits perfectly with his backstory. Not to mention, I don't see it as a negative like so many people seem to. Again, Rogel is the way he is because of his circumstances. He grew up on a planet that was an icy hell, a hellish wasteland, pretty much, where there was constant warring between houses, the House of Dorn that took him in, and from the get-go, he ended up having to unify that world, which is in constant state of warfare, and then he also had to lead them into spacecraft. Then he had to basically continue to craft an empire, conquering his own worlds, finding the phalanx, like managing that shit. There's so much that man accomplished by comparison to his brothers that, realistically, his brothers never achieved. Most of them only ever conquered a world or maybe a couple worlds. He conquered chunks of systems. Like, he had lots of planets. He had the phalanx. He had so much to offer the Emperor when he came to collect. I don't know. The rest of I could see why everybody would pull a Perturabo in that case and be a little, like,
Well, I didn't have that stuff to give the Emperor. Dorn's a mean overachiever, teacher's pet.
I just think at the end of the day, I love Rogaldorn. I don't understand the dislike of him, that lack of outward emotional, vulnerability. I think that's a good thing at the end of the day. I mean, the Primarchs that were outwardly emotionally vulnerable, for the most part, were all, taken in by chaos. Angron comes to mind, Perturabo. Need I list off the rest? I don't know. At the end of the day, I think I love Rogaldorn, I love the Fists. I love most of their successor chapters. Crimson Fist, Black Templars are my fucking favorite chapter. But at the end of the day, that's my thoughts. I'm sorry if it's all jumbled and there wasn't a lot of like structure to my rant here, but that's kind of the structure of these videos. It's more of like my off-the-cuff thoughts of different chapters. I will pull in other chapters for like comparison's sake and to talk about them, like I did with the Iron Warriors and Perturabo, and like I did with the Smurfs, and the Salamanders. I'll pull them in from time to time, but each of those will also still get their dedicated video. Anyway, if you disagree with me, you know what to do. Leave a dislike down below. Rant to me like, you son of a bitch, you're so wrong. Tell me down that in the comment section. But if you agree with me, if you like the video, please leave a like down below. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Doesn't cost you a goddamn dime to subscribe and give me that little bit of support. So subscribe, motherfucker. And leave a comment. Please do that, please. I love your comments. I don't care if it's anything like, I like cookies. Like, fuck it. Tell me you like cookies down below. Do it, man. Do it. Do it! Anyway, have a good one, guys. My name has been Asmogan, and remember,
The Imperium, my brothers.